2 seasons is actually a bubble. Obviously, we had Caitlin Clark coming in 2024, and it just completely exploded the league. And then during her second season, she got injured and she only played 13 games. And we saw a huge dip in viewership and attendance immediately when she got injured. Viewership and attendance 50% less. League.
And the truth is that momentum is already slipping. During the 2024 season, ESPN covered the WNBA daily. There were segments every single day. Stephen A. Smith weighed in regularly. Kendrick Perkins debated WNBA topics on major platforms. The league wasn't just being covered, it was being discussed. That level of visibility was unprecedented. The WNBA was finally embedded in the mainstream sports conversation alongside the NBA, NFL, and MLB. But when Caitlin Clark went down with injury in 2025, that coverage disappeared almost immediately. Daily segments vanished. Big-name commentators moved on. The league fell out of the news cycle just as quickly as it entered it. Now, it's February 2026. Instead of talking about basketball storylines, instead of hyping up a new season, instead of celebrating expansion teams in Toronto and Portland, the conversation is dominated by labor negotiations, CBA delays, questions about whether the season will even start on time. That's not how you sustain growth. That's how you suffocate it. Fans don't get excited about contracts and negotiations. They get excited about players, rivalries, and moments. Every week spent talking about uncertainty instead of basketball is another week the league fades further from public attention. The opportunity window the WNBA created in 2024 is still there, but it's closing. And what happens next will determine whether that window stays open or slams shut.
But then she also mentions here that general managers are still in the dark regarding rules for the 2-team expansion draft for the Toronto Tempo and the Portland Fire, including whether there will be a window for pre-expansion transactions. So we don't even know, because a lot of you guys were asking me, like, even at the end of last WNBA season, you were like, who do you think the Fever is going to keep? Like, who are they going to protect in the expansion draft? And I was like, I don't even know how many players they can protect. I don't know how it's going to go. The only reference that I have is last year's Golden State Valkyries draft, but that was only one team, and there were far less free agents last.
This is where the momentum conversation becomes absolutely critical. The WNBA experienced a massive surge in 2024 when Caitlin Clark entered the league. Viewership exploded. Attendance shattered previous records. Merchandise sales went through the roof. For the first time, the league felt like a constant presence in mainstream sports culture. Then 2025 happened. Caitlin Clark suffered an injury and appeared in only 13 games. Almost immediately, the league felt the impact. Viewership dropped by nearly 50% across the board. Attendance followed the same downward trend. This wasn't speculation or online chatter. It showed up clearly in ticket prices and arena turnout. Games that were once considered must-see events lost their demand overnight. Chicago Sky tickets, which had been among the hottest in the league due to rivalries and star power, dropped as low as $3 when fans knew Caitlin wouldn't be playing. That's not opinion, that's documented reality. As uncomfortable as it may be to admit, the league's recent success has been heavily tied to one player being healthy and visible. That doesn't diminish the talent across the league, but it does highlight a fragile reality. The 2026 season is the real test. This is the year that determines whether the WNBA's growth is sustainable or whether it was largely driven by a Caitlin Clark-centered moment. If the league delays the season or rushes free agency into a chaotic, compressed window, the quality of play on the court will suffer. And if the product looks disorganized or sloppy, casual fans won't stick around. Momentum is incredibly hard to build and incredibly easy to lose. One mismanaged season could undo years of progress.
They're going to be back in training camp at least a few weeks before this game. So as you can see, everything is getting super murky and it's messing up a lot of different things. And Storm is coming to hang out with us. Hi, Storm. He's just gonna sit here like a little parrot on my shoulder, I guess. Woo, okay, bye, Storm. And Robin Lundberg also put out an article today entitled WNBA enters CBA endgame with no room for error. If the WNBA can't finalize a new CBA in the coming days, the players in league risk throwing away the momentum they have gained. And it's so true. Like, this is the part that frustrates me the most.
That frustration you're hearing right now didn't come out of nowhere. And it didn't appear overnight. Rachel has been following this collective bargaining agreement situation closely since October, long before most people started paying attention. While others kept repeating the same reassurance, relax, there's still plenty of time, she was consistently pointing out a serious issue with the timeline. And now what she's been warning about for months is finally being confirmed. Front Office Sports recently validated her concerns, reporting that the WNBA may only be weeks away from having to delay the upcoming season. Not months, weeks. That distinction matters more than people realize. Even though the league released its full season schedule earlier this week, that doesn't mean everything behind the scenes is ready. In reality, the league still needs a finalized CBA by February in order to start the season on time. And here's the part that makes everyone uneasy. February 2nd is literally this weekend. To put that into perspective, think back to this exact point last year. Around this time, news was already breaking about DeWanna Bonner signing with Indiana. Fans were watching off-season workout footage. Free agency activity was loud, visible, and exciting. Teams were actively building their rosters, and the league felt alive. Compare that to now, and the difference is glaring. This offseason has been eerily quiet. General managers across the league still don't have clarity on some of the most basic logistical rules. They don't know how the expansion draft is going to work. They don't know how many players they're allowed to protect. They don't know how many roster spots they can realistically plan for. This level of uncertainty is almost unheard of at this stage of the calendar. And that's the core issue Rachel has been highlighting all along. You can't run a professional league efficiently when front offices are operating in the dark. Teams can't prepare. Players can't plan. Agents can't negotiate properly. Everything is stalled, waiting on an agreement that should have been settled already. The schedule release may look like progress on the surface, but without a CBA in place, it's essentially a shell. It's a calendar without structure. What's most concerning is how late this has all been allowed to get. At this point, the margin for error is razor thin. Any further delay doesn't just push things back slightly. It creates a domino effect that could disrupt the entire season. And now, instead of asking, will things be ready, the question has become how much damage has already been done?
There's a lot of things that people can engage with. They do not have to watch the WNBA. And so many people who came to watch the WNBA are brand new to it. And that first year, it's like super exciting because they're like watching Caitlin Clark. And then through that, they're starting to like other players and they're becoming fans of Caitlin Clark's teammates, but then they're also becoming fans of players on other teams. And they're also like, oh, look at this little matchup. Look at this little rivalry. Look at this MVP player. Look at this defense. Like, you open up this new world to new fans. And now they're like, well, what's going on? Like, we're not even talking about basketball. We've been talking about this freaking CBA.
To really understand how serious this situation is, you have to look at what's actually at stake here. This isn't just about pushing back opening night by a week or two. The entire structure of the offseason and potentially the season itself is hanging in the balance. The WNBA is welcoming two new expansion teams this year, the Toronto Tempo and the Portland Fire. Expansion is supposed to be a celebratory milestone, a sign of growth and confidence in the league's future. But expansion also brings complexity. When you factor in how protection lists work, this means the league needs to conduct expansion drafts involving 4 teams total. That process alone requires careful planning, clear rules, and time. Here's where things get even more complicated. Right now, the entire league is effectively operating as free agents. Without a finalized CBA, contract, negotiations, and roster decisions are frozen. According to multiple league sources who spoke to Front Office Sports, the absolute best-case scenario for free agency would be early March. And that's only if the CBA is signed by early February. Think about that timeline for a moment. If the CBA gets signed in early February, the league then needs the remainder of the month to organize and execute the expansion draft. Only after that can free agency realistically begin in early March. That already puts teams behind where they normally would be. Now look ahead to the calendar. Preseason games are scheduled to begin on April 25th. Indiana's first preseason matchup is set against New York on that date, followed by a game against Dallas shortly after. These aren't random games either. The league has clearly made a strategic shift in its marketing approach. The focus has moved from a Caitlin Clark-Angel Reese rivalry to a new marquee matchup, Caitlin Clark versus Paige Bueckers. The league is clearly trying to get those two stars on the court against each other as often as possible, and that includes preseason games. Those matchups are being positioned as must-see events, designed to drive ticket sales, viewership, and national attention. But none of that works if rosters aren't finalized, teams aren't prepared, and players haven't had enough time to train together. Every single piece of this puzzle depends on the CBA being resolved immediately. Without it, the expansion draft can't happen properly. Free agency can't start on time. And the carefully planned preseason showcase matchups risk becoming logistical nightmares instead of promotional wins.
Really disheartening. And I feel like this is kind of the time to panic. Like, there's not that much time. Do not twiddle your thumbs. Do not shuffle your feet. The time to get this thing done is now, so that you can have a free agency period where things are done correctly. You have to have a good season next year, period. And I know that there's been players and retired players that have said, like, basically, oh, if we get paid more, we'll be respected more and it'll just be good for everyone. Like, the fans do not care about that. Like, you could get paid, everybody could get paid $20 million a year, and if you go out there and put out a bad product, people...
This is where the timeline becomes genuinely dangerous. Training camps don't just appear overnight. Teams need several weeks of preparation before preseason games begin. If the first preseason game is scheduled for April 25th, players realistically need to report to training camp in early April at the very latest. Now, work backward from there. If players report in early April, free agency needs to be completed well before that, so rosters are stable. That places free agency in early March. Before free agency can begin, the expansion draft has to be completed, which pushes that process into late February. And before the expansion draft can even be planned, the CBA must be signed, ideally in early February. That entire sequence assumes everything goes perfectly. No delays, no unexpected disagreements, no last-minute renegotiations. Anyone who has ever followed labor negotiations knows how unrealistic that assumption is. But there's another massive issue that hasn't gotten nearly enough attention: arena availability. When teams want to move games into larger venues to capitalize on the Caitlin Clark effect, those NBA arenas need advance notice. You can't just decide 2 weeks out that you want to book Crypto.com Arena or the American Airlines Center. Those buildings host NBA games, concerts, conventions, award shows, and other sporting events that are scheduled months, sometimes years, in advance. If the WNBA waits too long to finalize its schedule logistics, those premium venues simply won't be available. And that matters because arena upgrades directly impact revenue. Bigger arenas mean more ticket sales. More ticket sales mean higher gross revenue. And that gross revenue is directly tied to the 30% revenue share players are currently negotiating for. Delays don't just hurt fans, they weaken the players' bargaining position. Every missed opportunity compounds a problem. Late decisions limit venue options. Limited venue options limit revenue. Lower revenue undermines the very financial goals the CBA negotiations are supposed to secure. It's a vicious cycle, and the clock is still ticking.